right. Good evening, everyone. We have a quorum. It appears we have 4 of us. I know Amy just messaged. She said she'd be a few minutes late. And I believe Pat is going to try and join us too, but he's running a few minutes late. So with that being said, I will entertain a motion to open.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Dugan.
Second.
Second by Mr. McCormick. We will take a roll call vote. All those in favor, Mr. Dugan,
Aye.
Mr. McCormick,
Aye.
Mrs. Werdeman, Mr. Sullivan, aye. We are open. Time is 7:03. All right. My camera seems to be going in and out, but good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Hanson Finance Committee meeting, Tuesday, March 9th. Got a pretty good agenda for the night. Cover a couple of departments, and then we'll have sort of a general budget discussion and move on. So with that being said, and seeing as he is here patiently waiting, I'd like to welcome Chief Mix to the meeting tonight. He's here to give us a basic overview of his budget. Promised him he'd be in and out in 20 minutes, so we won't make it too painful, but we're gonna just go over and give the committee an opportunity to ask you a couple of questions, Chief, and should be quick and painless like usual.
It hasn't changed much, so there shouldn't be too many questions.
Sure.
I'll give you a quick overview. So the budget is up slightly, about 157,000, and that's mainly due to two big increases. Or the biggest increases should be a 2% cost of living increase that was done in January of this current fiscal year. And that's obviously been figured in now. And then we figured the budget at a 2% increase for next fiscal year, which I know the reality might be quite different, but that's what the budget is based on. So that's the vast majority of the 157. There's also an increase in the maintenance line, which I can go into a little bit more if you want to go line by line, but the maintenance line is sorry, I'm getting background noise, so it's kind of throwing me off a little bit. Because of COVID. So we'll see how that's going to. It might be a $20,000 or $25,000 savings there if COVID miraculously disappears and I don't have to be disinfecting the station as much and purchasing as much PPE. So those are the two big ones. If you want me to run through each area and show the increases, I can do that. We just did the salaries, so again, that's all the officers figured with a 2% increase. I did also update the overtime line because I've been each year increasing it a little bit, trying to put it more in line with what we've truly been spending. I always refer to that line as the police equivalent of the snow and ice line because I can budget to an extent, but some events happen and I'm at the mercy of the event and how many people I need. We've been very fortunate so far this year because we didn't have any real major storms. Knock on wood, we've been lucky with the snow and some of the wind storms that in the past have caused a fair amount of overtime, especially with extended periods of time with no electricity. Next up, the operating expenses is pretty much trying to keep that pretty much the same with everything. You'll see a slight, actually a slight decrease in the uniforms because, as you know, when we went to the regional dispatch, we took on 4 officers to replace the 5 civilian slots we lost. And I had to up the uniform line last year to be able to outfit those officers. So that had a small decrease of about $3,000. Going down, everything else is pretty much the same. The computer line does have an increase. You see police computer services. That is mainly due because we're getting a new phone system, both our phone system and the fire department's phone system. Mine isn't quite as bad as the fire department. That's antiquated. So through 911, through the state 911 grants, the state has funded the new system. However, since it's voice over internet and we're taking advantage of that nice fiber loop that the town put in, which eventually will get us off some copper lines, it appears. There's some computer fees and licensing fees that are going to go up. Most notably, my recording. I have to keep some lines recorded. Right now, I'm using the 911 recorder that 911 was kind enough to leave. It's not compatible with the new system. So I have to pay licensing fees on each phone that's recorded. So that's going to increase about $2,400 a year. And then on top of that, we have to do, because it's all computer based now, we have to do a support and update software line as well. And that's $7,500 a year, almost $7,600. I also have some software that we've been using that we got through a grant I've been using for the past couple of years. That grant's gone. It was through the district attorney's office. I'm trying to get state 911 to pay it. It's not a huge sum of money. It's $2,000. It's a very handy piece of software though, in that it gives me immediate alerts, not only to crimes and other incidents, but more importantly, the grant was through to recognize overdoses, not only in Hanson, but it would give alerts in surrounding towns. So if we saw a trend happening, we could try to address that. Again, I'm working with the other 5 towns in the Rock, the regional dispatch, to see about trying to get 911 to pay for that software across all the departments. The next big increase you'll see is internet. As you know, we put in that fiber loop. So, and this is beyond me, okay, because if I was really good with computers, I wouldn't be sitting in front of you guys explaining police budgets. So, so all of the internet now comes through the police department. So everybody that's on this fiber loop doesn't have to have their own, Comcast business account. So that is budgeted all through me. So you see kind of a big increase, and it's like, I don't want people to think like I all of a sudden got all the premium channels or something in cable. It's to pay for the whole town. So some other departments should see slight decreases in theirs. I think everybody switched over, but town hall, and according to Ryan, that's got something to do with the currently has something to do with the studio that's in there, but eventually that'll be switched over as well. Building repairs and maintenance, as I mentioned earlier, that is an increase mainly because of the amount of hours I have to have the custodian in for COVID to continue cleaning and disinfecting. So that's up about $20,000. Like I said, I'm hoping maybe we can turn back on that as things get better. But one of the kind of a interesting thing with this, and hopefully I'm not cursing myself, but we haven't had any of the officers get COVID. We've had exposures, and I've had to send people home, and we've had to quarantine them, but no one's gotten sick. And I think that's a big testament, not only to the officers and they're vigilant, but to the fact that twice a day there's a custodian in here wiping things down and making sure the place is clean. After that, the only other increase I have that's of any significance would be the vehicles are slightly up. This past year we switched from full gas, they're Explorers, but the police interceptors we got our first 2 hybrids. I'm gonna have to talk to the highway department, see how much gas we're actually saving from them. Be honest, with the cars kind of creep me out because they move not making noise. That's always bothered me with hybrids, but we're getting over that. They seem like good solid vehicles. Ford's using a system that they've used in other vehicles for years already, so it's not like it's brand new technology. Problem is they cost about $3,000 more than a regular gas vehicle would. I would guess over the course of its lifetime, we'll get that $3,000, if not more, back. I don't have any great data on it other than an educated guess. And if you move down, if you remember, I have a communications line, even though we've partnered with Duxbury, and the 911 center is no longer here. However, there's still some things that are remnants from that department. One being the wireless line that jumped tremendously for a couple of reasons. One of the big ones is having gone to regional, again, through grant money from the state 911. All of my Mark Cruises now have rugged tablets in them. So what we call the MDTs, it's the equivalent. Those are $6,000 a piece. We just got the last two we needed, so that all the marked, like I said, all the marked units are up. I'm hoping to get a couple more in next year's grant. So I have something on the shelf when one goes down, and you can just swap it out. I can also take care of like an unmarked car for the detective. But that being said, is each one of those devices has a monthly fee of $40, $39. On top of that, fire has gotten 8 more devices. Actually, I think it's total of 9 more devices now that I think of the backup. So, you know, the $39 to $50 a month unlimited access fees that we get through Verizon add up, and that's jumped quite a bit. Plus, we had to add devices for police, for the Board of Health, and again, fire. And then on top of that, going to technology, we're setting up a redundancy for both fire and police, where this phone system now, if it goes down, if we do lose our Comcast service for some reason, we'll switch over to 1 or 2 different wireless networks so we can keep our phone systems up. And again, those are a monthly cost, but we're going to need them if we go down. And again, that's the whole town communications except for the water department. All their wireless devices come through me. And the last thing to remind you of is, if you look at the last page, it says assessments regional. That is what we pay Duxbury every year. Our current bill is $400,000 a year. The state had promised to pay $200,000. Then they adjusted the grants right after they did that. And this fiscal year, they've paid 100% of that. So state 911 has paid the $400,000. We're anticipating they'll do it again next year, but we can't be sure. So, you know, talking to Todd, we kind of leave this little $200,000 space holder, or I'm budgeting for it. And then, you know, it's up to everybody else to roll the dice on whether we actually hold the money off or not. Again, I think we're going to be fine with it. The state's encouraging people to regionalize, so I don't see them, you know, kind of going back on their verbal word that they gave us to pay, because that wouldn't be helpful for them to get other towns to go regional. However, that will be changing. I think they said the first 3 years they'll pay, and then we have 2 more years after that they're going to up it. I think it goes up 50% the first year, and then 75% the next, and then we'll be on the full hook in that 5th year. But don't quote me on those percentages. I was trying to find them. They gave them to me back last spring, and I just cannot locate that document. But I know they will be going up, and before next year I sit with you, I'll definitely have those figures and know what to anticipate. With that pretty much brings it through my budget. Like I said, I haven't had you know, there aren't a bunch of crazy increases. And the only other thing is, anything about articles, I do have one potential article, but
Yeah, if you have, if you can give us a summary of the article, that would be great. We haven't
so
seen a finalized list yet from Greer or the town administrator.
okay, so the article, what 8, 7, almost all, no, it was 8 years ago. 8 years ago, we started outfitting the officers with tasers, or electronic control weapons. The brand name's Taser, somebody calls them that. Right now we have a number of them that they still function. However, the screens, which can become a safety issue, the screens aren't working on them. So I'm working with Taser to try and see what we can do with them. They offered me to send them back, and if they could fix them, they charge me like $150 per Taser. But if they can't fix them, they said they're not shipping them back, and I'd have to get new ones. So I can't. I'd rather have a Taser with a bad screen, and I know it's heading towards the end of its life, than not have them at all.
Just from my knowledge, Chief, what's a bad screen? What's a screen?
So the tasers we use are X2s. They have 2 cartridges in them. So just think of maybe on like an office phone. You have a small LED screen, and it'll tell you, what lines picked up, or
Oh, okay. All right. So
it'll show you which cartridge is activated. That's where my safety issue comes in, because I don't want them to look at the screen and not realize which one's gonna potentially be on.
I misunderstood. So you're talking about an electronic screen that gives you some sort of display
On the, yes.
Okay.
On the left. So they're going. So we're still waiting. I got to tell you that Axiom is the company that owns Taser now. They've been kind of difficult to deal with since COVID hit, because they're spread out all over the country and working from home. We've been bugging them for 2 months for a quote. I use some pricing that I know. It's about $1,200 per Taser, which is the price we paid for the last ones that we needed. But I'm not doing the whole department, because we bought a bunch at one point. We bought like half at once and shared them, which is not optimal, because it's harder to track the usage, but it's doable. So long story short, is about an $11,000 placeholder I had. But we're trying to do a workaround on it. So I've already talked to John about it. I let Todd know that, we might not need it, but I might need it, kind of up in the air. And obviously it's one of those things where as I get towards the end of this fiscal year, if I have the funds, I'll do some shuffling. Maybe I'll come back to you, and then we won't be worrying about an article. So that's kind of my game plan right now. But the option that Taser has given us is not feasible for a department our size to ship out half of our Tasers and not know whether we're going to get them back. And in procurement wise, it was driving me nuts too, because I'm like, I can't ship them out and you not ship them back and nobody vote to get rid of them, So it's not an option that's feasible right now. So we're gonna keep working on that. I apologize, it isn't kind of solidified yet, but I'm at the mercy of kind of the only game in town, and that being Axiom.
Okay.
On the
Thank you,
taser,
Chief.
can you ship one out to see if it's fixable, and then you'd know?
No, yeah, that's the game plan we're gonna do. But they probably only have about another 3-year lifespan anyways, at most. I'm actually surprised most of them last as long as they have, given the conditions they go on in. The guys are real good about taking care of them, but it's an electronic device going out in the rain, the cold, the heat. So.
Okay. All right. Does anyone, Chief, thank you. A great presentation as always. Very thorough, and highlighting what is shaping up to be a difficult budget year for the town. The one thing I will say, I'll ask you a question, and if you don't know, it's fine. You discussed a 2% COLA increase. How much of that is there any, or what percentage would you say is contractual, sort of written into people's contracts?
All right,
versus what?
Yeah, no, I actually did figure this out. So if you look at the second line down, it says 510 salaries and wages.
Mhm.
It's 1.7 million. That includes both COLA and any step raises,
Okay.
any education incentives that they would be getting. That's with that 2%. If you notice in parentheses down below that, I put
Yep.
down without 2% COLA, it's $1,687,909.
Great, thank you. Right, questions from the committee for the chief?
I just have a couple. So you have, it looks like you have 16 members out of 25 that have the Quinn bill. That sound about right?
The Quinn or what would be a modified Quinn, depends upon when they came on, yeah.
Education. The number that I got isn't what's in that line. Is that due to other people having maybe professional improvement built in with that?
No, so which line are you looking at? I'm sorry. So
Well, it says additional gross Quinn.
additional gross Quinn.
You have
So
it at 156,930.
yeah, also in there, so it doesn't match up to the spreadsheets when you're looking at the officers per officer. Is that what you're saying? It doesn't match up to that?
Yeah. night
Because
differential.
that's also in that line, and I inherited this. It's the night differential, the shift commander pay is in there too. So, and that did increase $4,100 just based on how many officers I'm anticipating scheduling on nights.
Okay,
But that is why that's off.
I didn't see it, so there was a difference of like 59 grand. I thought it was night differential, but I wasn't 100% sure. And what line is your overtime? Is it the 250?
Should be about 250. Yeah, 250 even.
Just-
Yes,
It doesn't say
additional. It
overtime.
just says additional gross.
Perfect. All right, thank you.
Maybe, Ken, maybe what we'll have Todd add in parentheses overtime there, just to make that clear in case we go back next time.
I thought that's what it was. I wasn't 100% sure, Kevin. That's all. And then you're not anticipating, obviously, any retirements where you'd have to get new uniforms with other guys that are coming up.
So yes, I did knock that down. If you look, I spent 16,000 last year, which is a little over what was budgeted. I dropped it $3,000. I do anticipate a retirement next year. So yeah, that's why I dropped it down a little bit. I might have some wiggle room in there later. I got to see what's going to go on with some other people. I have one vacancy right now. We just lost one officer to Braintree. We can't compete with Braintree salaries, to be honest with you. Which is too bad. He's a great officer. It was tough to lose him, but
Yep.
I'm obviously not looking to fill that spot right now until we see how things go for next year.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Any other questions for the chief? Mike, you're on mute. Sorry, I'll.
Are we there now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I had made about 3 or 4 notes of things that I wanted to ask, and you covered at least 3 of them during your presentation, so thank you. The only real question I had was that some of the operating expense increases were attributed to extra things that were COVID related, like, for example, the extra cleaning. Any likelihood or any chance any of that can be recouped through any of the government funding that's coming through the state, or is that already accounted for?
So this fiscal year it is. Todd kind of rejuvenated me a little bit because I'm basically spending double on my custodian line right now because we doubled his hours. So there's a potential, but that's kind of what I do is keep track of it, and I send it up to John and Todd, and then they do whatever they do with their magic numbers to make it fit the grant. So some of it could be. Obviously, if things, I mean, the vast majority of the department is vaccinated now. We didn't make everybody do it. It's a personal choice, but the majority of the officers are. And again, we've been very diligent. I'm kind of hoping that hey, maybe we have the money there, and you know what? Next year I'm sitting there going, hey, we didn't, we could cut this off and halfway through the year. Whether any of the 1.9, what is it, trillion that just the
Yeah.
feds just did, I don't know whether that's going to flow down to us. We've been tracking, myself and Miss Fitch have been tracking whatever we could with PPE and the cleaning and the amount of bleach when we could get our hands on it and everything else. So there is a potential there, but I mean, I had to do my due diligence and put it in the budget.
So the right answer is coulda, shoulda, might, possibly, but can't count on it.
The best
And
answer I
we
can give
need
you
to
is
account for it because it is, until things change, they are legitimate expenses we need to account for.
yes. So the best I could say is maybe.
Okay, great. Mike, any other questions for the chief? Michelle or
No,
Amy?
like I said, I had 3 or 4 and most were covered in his presentation, so no need to bring those back up.
Yeah, I'm good. I appreciate the details.
Thank you.
Amy, any questions for the chief? Seeing that there are not.
No, I don't have any.
Okay, thanks, Amy. All right, well, Chief, as always, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to sit down with us. Obviously, as everyone's well aware, the budget is a moving target right now, but this goes a long way to get a baseline for us from which to work. So thank you very much and have a good night.
You too, thank you. And if anybody has any questions or anything, please either call me or email me and I'll get it right back to you as soon as I can.
Absolutely, we'll do that. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Have a good night.
All right, and in just in time, joining us is the library director, Miss Karen Stolfer. So thank you for joining us tonight. We wanted to give all the department heads an opportunity to give just a brief presentation. We understand that this is a difficult time. We're looking to discuss the budget, your budget as you see it now, barring any changes that may come down the line. So with that being said, we'll give you, a few minutes to go over it and hit the highlights. And then afterwards, brief question and answer period from the group here, and we should be good to go. And just for the team here, if you're looking for the, I believe the library budget starts on page 51 and 52 of your budget book. And I guess the general, the two omnibus budget. So, all right, with that, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. So I'll start with salaries, just kind of go over those. In addition to the 2% increase that we were instructed to put in, I'm requesting a 50-cent increase per hour for 2 youth services and reference librarian positions. That would add just under $1,600 to that budget line. As I've mentioned in the past, these are professional positions. The current rate of pay is not comparable to the duties and levels of responsibility that is required of those positions. It's also important that we are competitive with other area libraries that are serving similar communities so that we can retain our good employees. And right now we're not competitive. For union, in addition to step increases, I'm including $2,650 for vacation buyback, as well as $1,600 to ensure enough staff coverage at the circulation desk if another employee is out on vacation. And I don't know if you've already spoken with the town clerk's office, but we share an employee and she is requesting additional hours for that employee, which would mean that the employee would no longer be able to work at the library. And so if those are approved, those hours, she does 5 hours here. So those would be given to our cataloger, excuse me. And that would make an 18-hour position into a 23-hour position, which would obviously make it a benefited position. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. Expenses are pretty straightforward. Everything is level funded except for our contracted line, which is the cost of membership in our library network. And that's just increased a little bit less than $100 from last year. Also, our materials line is slightly increased. To qualify for state aid, we have to spend at least 16% of our budget on, 16% of our, what is appropriated on materials. And so that figure is just calculated based on a formula that's based on other figures in our budget. So my total proposed budget is $470,110, and that's just over a 3% increase from FY21. So I'm happy to answer any questions about any of that.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Just looking at your narrative here at the end.
I got one, Kevin. We do this every year, and nothing against you, Karen. I think we got to fix it. We keep 50 cents in ourselves to death. Every single budget with 50 cents in someone. How do
I'm
we?
sorry, I was having trouble hearing you.
Every single budget that we have, we end up 50%ing someone. We're killing ourselves with 50 cents every single time. We did it last year. We do it this year.
Last year it wasn't, I put it in, but it didn't go through.
So how do we fix that? How do we, as a finance committee, sell to the town that we need to get a dollar figure that's comparable to what they're doing around other libraries and other areas, so that we don't have to it's kind of built in like the 2%.
Well, I did actually just recently, the Wage and Personnel Board did approve to change the wage ranges in the bylaws for those positions. So obviously that wouldn't affect doesn't affect the current employees.
Yeah.
So I'd really just like to get them up to a certain level, and then once they're at that level, then they can kind of, it's sort of like union has the step increases in addition to the 2%. So I want to kind of do something like that, so kind of similar for those employees.
So I think to Ken's question is there a number, is there a figure that you're looking, do you have that figure, or is it just sort of, you take what you can get? I mean, I understand it's tough. As far as, unfortunately, you guys provide a phenomenal resource for the town. Unfortunately, as far as the pecking order falls out, you come out towards the bottom.
Yeah.
Is there a guess?
Trying to help you so you don't have to keep on pecking the 50 cents to death.
Right. And I think that's what we're saying, is that what number does that need to be to get them to where, it's the proper level?
Right. So I'll just kind of give you some ideas of some of the other comparable libraries. So let's see, like we're comparable to like Plainville, Kingston, Carver, and Lakeville. And so they're like, say, their children's librarian positions. I mean, the average was $23, and ours are right now they're in like the $21 range. So a lot of them were more like in the $25 range. So I mean, 21 to 25, that's, that is a pretty big jump. So that's why I didn't feel like doing it, all at once would be kind of
absolutely
strained. So, but it is kind of like maybe like a $4 increase would be needed.
Yeah. And
25 is the high side. 25 is the high side. 21 is the low side that you're at. So
let me just check too so let's see. Well, the average was 23. So a lot of them were like $24, $25 an hour. There were a couple that were like 22. But as I said, right now they're in the $21 range here.
that's really it. I mean, I know you come every single year, you come 25 cents, and it's got to be frustrating.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't get it. If there was a way that we as a committee could try to put something together that would stabilize some line, a figure, a dollar figure like Kevin was talking about, and that's the starting point, and then you can build off of that.
I understand. Yeah.
That's it. I have nothing else.
Okay. I did also just want to point out, I know, just as I jumped on, that you were saying how, it could be a very difficult year coming up with the possibility of cuts. And I did just want to remind the committee that the library still has not regained hours from cuts previously. We're still short 15 hours for staff and 2 operating hours. So just kind of going forward, if that can be taken into consideration, for any discussions for possible cuts.
absolutely.
Yeah, because we've been stretched pretty thin for a while. So
You guys open full time right now?
I'm sorry.
Are you guys open full time right now, library?
We're doing appointments right now. Yeah, but we're pretty much open. Yeah, normal hours.
No programs or anything.
We're doing virtual and like a lot of like taking make things. So like we'll give kids like a craft and they take it home and do it themselves there.
Okay.
But nothing, no in-person programming.
Other questions from the committee? Mrs. Werdeman, good?
Good.
Mr.
I'm
Dugan?
good.
Yeah,
The only other question I'll ask, and it's always the issue that seems to pop up, the building itself.
Mhm.
How are we holding up? I know, it looks like you're level funded building repairs, but it always seems to pop up that I don't know if it's a leak or a window or how's the building itself holding up?
We do have one leak that I'm going to be talking to the building commissioner about. Possibly, we'd already talked about doing the siding, before the pandemic, and that, obviously got side railed, but about replacing the siding on the building, which they think is the cause of that leak, and a few others that we've had. So that's really, and we already have some money for that was approved several years ago, and it never got fully completed. So hopefully that what's left in there will cover the replacement of the siding to fix those leaks.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any final questions for Ms. Stolfer?
No,
Is your custodian is not the same as the police custodian?
No, we have a 19-hour custodian and there's a 16-hour at the senior center. So combined, it's full-time, but that's not really adequate as well. So that's a discussion for future maybe, but
Okay. Yeah. All right, I didn't know if we use the same custodian for multiple.
no, it's different. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that pretty much covers it. I appreciate you coming by and running through the budget. It always makes it easier. I can't tell if virtually makes it even easier or you can at least do it from home. So Karen, thank you again for stopping by. And if we have any further questions, we will reach out. I'll reach out to you over email.
Okay, great.
Thank
Right.
you, Karen.
All right. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, so that covers police and the library. I think it was good of note that, they have a figure. As I've been combing through the budgets, I've noticed that 2% is laid down across the entire structure. It's not 2% isn't that much when you break it down per 2 million, but it is some. So, it's good to know that people are thinking about it. I mean, clearly the chief has a backup number that we're probably going to have to end up going to. I mean, I hate not giving people their 2% to stay ahead of the curve, but in a situation like this where we're still $2 million in the hole, it's unfortunately going to have to be the first thing to go. So,
Yep.
It's
Gotta come from somewhere.
yeah.
He was saying that the police chief was saying, is he saying there's 2% in this year's budget that's rolling into next year's budget and then 2% for next year's budget? Did I hear that properly?
Yeah, I think they've put 2% in. I want to say some of the contracts that weren't yearly negotiations, they were 2-year negotiations, as I recall, that it was wrapped in already. So there was an automatic 2%. And then it looks like it, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because if you look at the difference, his difference without the 2% doesn't seem to be enough for me if you took 2% away from everyone. So I think some people have the 2% locked in, maybe in a contractual negotiation, and others do not. So,
which begs a bigger picture of, and I don't recall off the top of my head, are we as a town negotiating union contracts across the board for everybody? Or do we have we've got to do fire, but police expires next year? I just, I don't recall off the top of my head as to what we have with those issues. So to your point, we're looking at 2% as kind of this plug figure, but are we 0? Are we 1? Are we 3? Some of those may, as I said, may already be contractually obligated, which I'm guessing are in here. I just don't know where that stands and how that's going to play out looking at the budget going forward. I guess kind of what I'm saying is to where we're talking about trying to find some savings. What if it's a situation where it's instead of the 2%, it's 0.5%? How do you negotiate a new contract saying, here's all that we're going to do? That's going to end up in a stalemate, I would assume.
Well, I agree with you, because if it's 2% over a 2-year deal that's already been negotiated and signed, you can't take it. If it's 2% in this budget, there's some leeway, but you can't unnegotiate a contract that's already been signed. You'd be in court and spend more money in court. So I don't know where the 2%, because not every union or every contractual contract is on the same playing field. I can't believe that the town just gets 2% every year. They may use it as a placeholder.
I think it's a placeholder, Ken.
Yeah.
I think they fall back on the placeholder, knowing that some people already got the 2, but it is, and to Mike's point, it's a problem because they negotiate these all separately.
Yeah.
And in different periodicity. So it's not like every 2 years, the whole town's contracts are renegotiated. Fire is on a different schedule than police, that's on a different schedule than town hall, that's on a different schedule than the library. And I think, if you were to find the average of that number, it's probably around 2%, but maybe, like you said, some are 3, some are 1, some are 1.5. But it'll be something that I think we'll have to have Todd and John dig down into. And if we say, hey, if it says 2% COLA on there, that to me is is not contractual.
Upcoming. It's not already guaranteed. It's upcoming.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything that's already in there should be wrapped in there, and anything where in a note that says 2% cost of living allowance, that that's eligible for cut. So it's not it's not something any of us want to do, but I think when it comes to having to cut a body or having to cut town raises across town, then it'll we'll see what it comes to.
Obviously, you've done the same math I have through the book. 2% isn't even going to get us close. So
yeah.
But it's a start.
In the grand scheme of things, I want to say a 2% raise across the board in terms of total dollars is probably only $65,000-$70,000. So, the bucket we're trying to empty or fill, for lack of a better term, that isn't going to get us much.
No.
Okay. So I think we're working pretty well with the 2 meetings a night, 20 minutes per department head. I'd like to probably move forward with another set. I might look to the town hall, maybe have the town clerk and the treasurer on the next call. And then we don't have, I talked to the town administrator. The highway commissioner is an interim fill, and I believe he's leaving next week. So I'm not sure if that's just going to be presented by the town administrator, that budget. But we don't really have a department head there. There's not a department head right now for recreation. So those 2 department heads are missing. So, I think I'd like to press forward with the rest of town hall and at least be done with that and set ourselves up for a meeting with the superintendent at some point, in the next few weeks. Save that one for last. We all know that one is the biggest mover. So, but I haven't heard any communication from town hall as to movement or unification with Whitman behind a number. So we will see where that goes. Questions or concerns about where we're headed or what we've got on our plate for now.
I just reiterate the same comments from last week, which is the going over these budgets and with increases or for example, in libraries, presentation of I'm trying to get my people up a little bit. It's all well and good until we get to the point of, budget A and budget B. And unfortunately, I think that because we go to town meeting before that any override would be voted on, I'm assuming then in theory, we've got to work off of, budget B with the expectation budget A would be approved should the override carry, I guess. So sooner or later, we need to come up with a rational plan here as to how we're going to attack a $2 million shortfall.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's, again, if we're still in a unique circumstance with regard to COVID, do we have the opportunity to switch it? Do we have the opportunity to do the same thing we did this year where it went to the ballot first and we knew, what the status of an override would be going into town, at least from a vote standpoint.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's possible. I know there's all sorts of legal hoops and, the town clerk probably could better answer that question, but I know last year everything seemed to move pretty fluidly when it needed to. And I don't know if we're still, how long we can operate under the governor's emergency powers or state of emergency order. I know that we were on my call with the Mass Municipal Association, we were discussing, that COVID is really setting the bar for maybe changing the way we do business as all towns throughout the Commonwealth,
Right.
saying, hey, maybe we're doing this backwards. Maybe we move everything forward and then know where we're going instead of having to, like you said, Mike, present something, go to a vote, see the vote fail, then have to go back and change it again. So more to follow, I think, on that. But yeah, it's I've talked to the town administrator and their town accountant about we're gonna have to go in the closer we get with, I think, two or three budgets in hand and say, here's one without an override, here's one with half the override amount, here's one with a full override amount, and it's come what may, we'll pull the winning ticket. So any other comments or questions, concerns?
Just following on that, I'm sorry to jump up on everybody else, but following on that point, what's going to be roughly our timeline to figure this out? Here we are, March 9th. You would theoretically have that town meeting first, beginning of May. So we're looking at basically we're only 40 days out, give or take 45 days out. What's our timeline to come up with this? When do we need to start having these serious discussions about that we're proposing? This is how we're going to handle, budget A. This is how we're going to handle budget B or C. And I guess if we've got a couple of departments that are going to be presented by the town administrator, does this give us the opportunity to have a more detailed meeting with him, of him coming in to say, here's what we're looking at the budget? I'd like us as a committee to have a little bit more of a hands-on approach as to how we're presenting that overall budget, as opposed to kind of what was last year of the selectmen made the decision to say, we're going to swap this and this and we're balanced. So these are my concerns of as the timeline is narrowing, of things that I want to see us as a committee address.
I think we should probably at some particular point meet with the selectmen, which we didn't do the last time, and hold them to the fire so that we don't get caught with our pants down again. Because it's 10%. I mean, if you just took the budget to make up $2 million, you got to take 10% out of this entire budget. and no budget can support a 10% cut. No department can support a 10% cut across the board. So we don't even know what we have for dollars yet, to make up that difference. So we need to get the selectmen and we need to get John in a room. That's why we got to get in person as fast as we possibly can. Zoom thing is not working for me whatsoever.
Absolutely. I agree. I will push them. Town administrator was on vacation last week. He's back in this week. And it might be as easy as having a joint session with them on one of they meet the same time we do. So it's as easy as maybe scheduling a joint session.
Yeah, I just think we need to be on the same page this year with them because we obviously weren't last year.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that one was an 11th hour, change that went forward, and it was beyond, I don't want to say beyond our control, but those changes came in, I think, 2 nights before town meeting, and it was.
That isn't fair to us, though.
No, absolutely. It isn't fair to us as.
Obviously, I was extremely disappointed in the way that turned out, but with very little say in it. We kind of just watched it happen. We spoke our piece, but we watched it happen because they, as Mike said, they, pretty much set what they were going to do, and we kind of followed along. I don't think this budget can afford that. This is 3 times or twice as much, 3 times as much as that one is.
Right.
So I think we have to have a little bit, I agree with Mike, we have to have a little bit more, conversation with the parties to find out what we have for money, if there is any. I don't know if there is, free cash or whatever, cherry sheet money of what our anticipation is for it, and then find out exactly what our numbers are. Because right now, with not knowing anything, it's 10%. And that's nearly impossible for everybody, I think. I mean, I don't want to speak for everybody else, but.
No, and you know what? I'll follow up on your point. It's part of this that becomes the issue is if we've got to get that number down, then are we, well, this guy can't have this, but this guy can, and you're pitting departments against each other to the point where I think the 10% across the board becomes a little bit more fair. But then you look at that's, $47,000 for library and a couple $100,000 for police.
Yeah.
And you're kind of saying does that balance out? How fair is that? But so if we are going to be in this position, and the only reason I keep bringing it up is I just go back to our town's general history with voting overrides, that I think that this is something that's going to be needed to be discussed, have a plan in place, and what are we going to do based on some of the previous information passed on by the town administrator. I think it was some of that free cash was paying down the middle school debt, and I think at the end of the day, all that was left over was like $112,000, and I'm just going off the top of my head. So Ken, it's not like we can rob that piggy bank again to balance things out. And I think that's kind of what we did to help get us across the finish line last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a great, you're there. It's a ballpark estimate, Mike, I'd say is right around there with free cash. There is, the bottom line is there really is none, so. Okay, it is 7:56. I'm gonna hold off on the minutes. There's something screwed up about the files, so I've got to fix that. We'll push it to next time. So I realized when I was pulling them up that I may have inadvertently sent the wrong one. So we will push that to a later date. I will reach out to the town administrator tomorrow and see if we can, unfortunately, I can't just go up there because town hall's still closed, which really puts a cramp on getting business done. You got to try and call up there. So, but I will express those concerns to the town administrator, and I will press for, maybe a combined session where we can brainstorm and get some things accomplished with the selectmen.
Yeah, that's a good idea for sure.
All right, that's all I have.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Dugan has made a motion to adjourn. Was that a second by Mr. McCormick?
Yes, sir.
Motion's been made and seconded. We will do a roll call vote. Mr. Dugan,
Aye.
Mr. McCormick,
Aye.
Mrs. Werdeman,
Aye.
Mrs. Wright,
Aye.
Mr. Sullivan, aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thanks.